All right, guys, welcome to my Week 18 conclusion of the regular season video. As we all know, many of these games matter, but there's some that don't. With that being said, let me start us off with Saturday's games. Starting off, we have the Browns visiting the Ravens. I don't think I've ever seen a 17.5 point favorite, especially from a division rival of the AFC North, what is supposed to be one of the grittiest, hard knuckled, smash mouth divisions in all of football. But we got Baltimore here saying, oh, and their odds are 17.5, and the money line in negative 2,000 with a 89.8% chance to win. Why in the world would you just not say that the Browns have a 1 in 10 chance of winning? But you guys, I'm not going to dawdle really on these picks. I think that we all know that Baltimore's going to win this game. They don't want a potential chance that they fall out of hosting a home game for winning this division. This division that has been crazy wild all year. Unless you're the Browns, which there's nothing crazy about it except for the fact that people are still dwelling on the trade. That's madness. When you dwell on a trade for this many years, you feel like the Broncos, who decided they weren't going to deal with that kind of notion about them and got rid of Russ. But I'm taking Baltimore, no contest. Bengals Steelers. Like I said before, the AFC North, a smash mouth division. We got the Steelers, who have just looked like a floppy mess the last few weeks. And people want to say that, oh, hey, they had to play so many games in so many days. But you look at the Kansas City, and they locked up the number 1 seed in that stretch. So I don't want to hear any excuses. Pittsburgh. This whole business about how, when 10 guys do their job and 11 and then one, doesn't, and it ruins the team. I don't know what it's about. I don't know who they're targeting. I think people think they know, but they really don't. But going into this, we've got Cincinnati, who it's a must win in order to have slim playoff hopes. And they've been lighting it up. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're Pittsburgh, you're hoping that you can defend Chase and Higgins, which I don't think they'll be able to. Joey Porter has been banged up at the end of the year. And Russell Wilson, while he may be able to throw some moon balls against what's a porous defense in Cincinnati, I just don't expect him to keep up with who could be an MVP dark horse despite his stats, because they haven't had a winning season, or the season that many had hoped in Cincinnati. And they don't even give Cincinnati that much credit to beat the Steelers. They say they're only 1.5 point favorites. Well, I'll tell you this. I am going Cincinnati. Screw the Pittsburgh. Screw Russell Wilson, who's a joke. And I just mentioned about, being a problem in the Broncos culture. And now maybe he is a problem in this culture, not playing very well. And with a run game that wasn't very good last week, who do you fall back on if you're Pittsburgh offensively? So I'm going with Cincinnati, who's a red hot offense and has every reason to win this game, over Pittsburgh. Moving on to Sunday, we've got the Texans hosting Tennessee. I don't think this game has that much relevance. I don't know who they're starting on Tennessee for quarterback. It's probably Will Levis. But Houston, goodness, have they had a rough season. To only be favored by 1 against a 3-win team in the final week of the season is not that reassuring. And it's nuts because, I see that Shaq Mason is doubtful. I see I see that and I think, oh, one of the veterans on their O line who's, a more well rounded player not playing on that shaky O line. And then Tennessee coming after Stroud all game. There's a reason he's the second most sacked QB in the NFL. But definitely not going with Tennessee. I'm going with Houston because maybe they have hopes that they can end the season strong and they can possibly, bring some fire to the postseason. Because right now, they are in desperate need of any momentum they can get. Panthers, Falcons. A game that matters because the Falcons, if they lose to the Panthers, they're out of the playoffs. The Buccaneers get in. They don't even have to win their game. And the Panthers, they've been playing scrappy kind of off and on these last, couple weeks. I am sad that Chuba is injured. And I think that, Atlanta has so much to play for. And without your workhorse back and Chuba, who's been doing well, I just wonder whether Bryce Young can shoulder the load. And while he's been playing better as of late, I just don't think he's going to do well enough to be able to outscore the Falcons. The Falcons, who are a team that looks very different with Penix at QB. So I'm going with the Falcons at home because they really need this win. Otherwise, they have no shot at the postseason. Saints, Buccaneers. Like I said before, the Buccaneers, this could be the biggest bait game you've ever seen. Obviously, Derek Carr is now questionable. Alvin Kamara is now questionable. You'll wonder how much of the rust they can shake off quickly to keep up with a Tampa Bay offense that has been very, very relentless, especially in Tampa. So looking at the end, Antoine Winfield possibly playing, questionable with his injury and him not having played as much near the end of the season. But if you're Tampa Bay, I don't think you're really, and you're Todd Bowles, you're not really going to bet on the Falcons losing to a bad Panthers team, to a bad Panthers team. So you're going to go out here and you're going to beat your younger brother, the Saints, in the NFC South, and you're going to secure your playoff spot, ending your season with 10 wins. Bills, Patriots. As we all know, Josh Allen is in the running for MVP. I don't really see them sitting Josh Allen, who it's not like he's a kind of QB like Lamar Jackson who has the potential to really get a really bad injury. He hasn't been injury prone really for his whole career. And I think that, with the way that they're playing, they're going to want to keep the momentum they have, and they're going to want to keep their starters playing, because I think it's a very good thing they have going in Buffalo, and they are a young team, and you really don't, they have young weapons, I should say. They have, on offense, and it's like you want to keep, you want to keep them consistent and not lull them into kind of a where they're not ready to perform in their first or second postseason game without anybody ahead of them like Stephon Diggs, who can carry the load and has been to the postseason before. So I expect the Buffalo Bills to really play. Maybe they pull them at some point in the game, should they be winning by a lot or whatever else. But I really don't expect them to sit Josh Allen just because, he wants his first MVP and he's deserving of it like several other candidates. So I'm taking the Bills over New England. Moving on, we have Jaguars, Colts. As we know, the Colts really threw away their season against the Giants last week, and a lot has come out about the culture of the team. And it just sounds really, really bad, like there's going to be a reckoning in Indianapolis. And with that being said, I know it sounds asinine because I don't believe in Doug Peterson, but I'm going to say that Jacksonville takes this game maybe shift up you know, the draft order a little bit again. I mean, we've seen that so much this season now. At the end of the season, of course, with certain teams being like, yeah, we're not going to quit playing, like the Giants, obviously. But I expect Jacksonville to really go out and try and play against a divisional opponent that is really struggling. And, Indianapolis also just doesn't really, they haven't done really that well against the Jaguars, and they're one of their 4 wins this season. So I'm taking Jacksonville. Moving on, we have Commanders Cowboys. As we all know, the Commanders they're a lock for the postseason. And my Packers have, the implications are all surrounding the Commanders, of course. My Packers should win and the Commanders lose, then we're not locked into the 7th seed, and we're playing either one of two teams. Now the Cowboys, as we know, are already like knocked out. Today they released Zeke. It's really bizarre because apparently Jones was like, I want him to have a shot at to play in the playoffs. And I'm like, what team is going to sign Zeke, who hasn't done anything for 5 years? But looking at this, I fully expect Washington to really beat Dallas. I think that Washington has good momentum right now. They've played a couple of close games and they've played very, very well, blow for blow with their last 2 matchups, being the Eagles and the Falcons. So, I kind of expect that sort of thing to happen again. And I'm going to go with Washington to really finish their season strong and carry that momentum into the postseason. Giants, Eagles. This game doesn't really have implications. The Eagles have already locked up the 2nd seed in the NFC. They can lose. They can even rest. Obviously, Hurts is still questionable with his concussion protocol. The talk with him is that, you don't want him going into the postseason and having missed essentially almost 3 games, because then he's going to have to shake off the rust, and you don't know, what kind of momentum the wild card team is. More than likely the Packers at this point, who are going to be looking, for revenge for that week 1 loss in Brazil. Now they favor the Philadelphia by 3, which to me just isn't really that much considering they're up against a team that is, the reversal of their record at 3-13. And, I do like the Giants and the players they've drafted, but they're still just not a team that's there yet. So I don't expect them to keep it this close, I'm assuming they do play Saquon. I feel like he doesn't need to, and he's a part of the 2K club. But if he really wants the, rushing title, which to me, was only a matter of time, with the increase of games in a season and all of that, it isn't as much of an accomplishment as if it had been done, years ago, when AP was like 4 yards short or whatever else, in a 16-game season. But it's still an accomplishment. I'm not belittling it at all. He obviously has a very good O-line as well to, get him blocks. But for me, for them to risk Saquon, who is the MVP of their team and was in the MVP conversation, I just wonder if they're going to play him. And to me, that's a crapshoot to predict this game. Because if they play a lot of backups and that sort of thing, I actually don't think Philadelphia wins. I think that, they're going to play it conservative and play a bunch of backups. But I'm still going to go with Philadelphia because I don't know who they're playing, over the Giants, because why wouldn't I? Bears, Packers. As we all know, my Packers lost last week against the Vikings in a game where if they had put up more than 3 points in the first half, it could have been different. And we could have been talking about how Green Bay could have maybe even moved past, maybe potentially could have moved past the Vikings, in the standings or in that sort of thing. But that dream is obviously gone. Obviously, a win here would be big. You don't want to be going into the postseason off of 2 losses at the end of the year when you were doing very well, winning games before that. So I am expecting that my Packers win. It's final week of the season at Lambeau, very beautiful. And I expect, LaFleur to really try to get these guys to play really, really well before their postseason run. So I'm taking my Packers, of course, over the Bears. I guess I didn't really talk about the Bears too much, but the Bears, as we know, it's just been kind of a rough going. And it's really like we'll see what they do next year to change the culture of this team and who they get as a head coach. Moving on, we have Seahawks Rams. The Seahawks were eliminated because even with a win, the strength of schedule is in favor of the Rams. There was like 3 out of 5 games that needed to go in the Rams' favor last week that did go in their favor. So really, this is one of those games that it's kind of funny. It's 2 high win teams, which you would think have implications on the playoffs, but it does not. Now the Rams, obviously, I think that Seattle is going to come out gunning and they're going to come out playing, and the Rams are going to do the same thing. I don't think this is a game that really anybody's going to take off. This is a bitter NFC West divisional matchup, and they're usually pretty gritty over there, especially with the talent of each team. But looking at this game, I do think that I think that the Rams are going to take it slightly easier due to the fact that they don't want to get any guys hurt, because they are one of those teams that they've had guys hurt this year, and you want to be going in healthy to the postseason. And it's like Kyron Williams is doing well, Puka, Cooper. You obviously want to keep Stafford upright as well. So with that being said, I think the Rams, are more than likely to maybe not play as hard, I guess, because they are just due to injury history. I think that they're more liable to have injuries. So I'm going to predict that Seattle wins this game, and to really end their season and really kind of look forward to next year. Moving on, we have Dolphins Jets. As we all know, if the Dolphins win, which I kind of expect them to, I really want to see, I guess, my man Aaron Rodgers throw one more touchdown so he can have 500 in case he does retire, which, is always a possibility. No matter how much hate he's gotten this year, no matter how bad he's played, I just think that he's definitely one of those guys that's deserving, and I mean, if you don't like Rodgers, that's fine. But, against the Dolphins, who I think can be really high scoring against the Jets, I think that, the Miami wins. They go into New York and they win this game. And hopefully Tua plays. But I think that last week, they did pretty well without Tua. Surprisingly, based on when he was out, earlier in the season, and their games went porously. But they are competing for a playoff spot, and obviously the Jets, you kind of want to keep your position, in the draft potentially. And, I think that they really just can't keep up with the offense of the Dolphins that needs this win. Moving on, we have Chiefs Broncos. The Chiefs, as they said, are resting their all of their starters. Now, here's the nuts thing I say about that is that they've been having a kind of skid where they cannot close games. They haven't been able to play full games, which, could haunt them in the postseason, and especially in a game like this where even if they win, but they barely win against backups and Carson Wentz, it just kind of shows me that you need another year. You need some more talent, and you just need more talent, and you need more time, because I don't think anybody expected the Broncos to be at this point this season. And obviously, if they had, won a couple of, other games earlier than this, they would have already secured a spot. But Kansas City, to me, their backups are, still really good. They're the champs for a reason. They've got very good depth. And while they're not even favoring Kansas City in this game, they're this could be a day where the backups are like, "Hey, let's let our names be known." And let's let our names be known. I think it's crazy that they give Denver an 11-point advantage. I still think the backups of Kansas City are going to, put up a fight and make this a game. I don't think that they're going to let the Broncos just, let up and, or just let up on the Broncos, and that sort of thing. Unless that I have to say, they really just don't want the Bengals to get into the playoffs. Because as we all know, the Broncos need to lose. So looking at this game, I'm just going to go with my gut. I think that Kansas City still wins it. I think they hit that Sweet 16 and, they go into the off season only having lost to the Bills. Chargers, Raiders. Not really a game with playoff implications, but seeding implications. The Raiders obviously have a very high pick. There's no 2-win teams in the league. They're either 3 or less. And the Raiders, they've been playing tough lately. The Chargers, what I wonder is that they've already locked up a spot. What do they think about what the seeding is? I guess I don't know as much about their seeding and where they necessarily could fall based on wins and losses this coming week. But, you kind of want to go out with a win. You want to beat the Raiders. You want to show you can go on the road as well and play well because you're good. You're a wild card team, obviously, so you don't have any home field advantage and you're on the road from this point out. So really go and prove that you can play and have a really sound game, against the Raiders. So I'm going with the Chargers. Moving on to 49ers. Cardinals, I don't know why they even put this game at, 4 o'clock, obviously 2:25 because I'm Mountain time, but it's ridiculous. It's nuts to me that like they put this there. San Fran obviously playing last night. He is now doubtful. His arm seemed to really take some punishment, which, ironically enough, could play a really, I mean, depending on what the damage is, could play a big role in what they sign him to and all of that. And it's like already a banged up team. But San Fran obviously played with fire last night. I feel like, if Purdy hadn't thrown essentially just 2 terrible picks, they could have beat the Lions, and really made a statement win that, like, oh, this team is still going to have grit and that sort of thing. But then you look at the Cardinals, obviously it didn't go the way that they had hoped. They had played a lot better than a lot of people said as well. And, obviously a win here, you're already kind of a middle of the pack pick, having, being around 500. But, the Cardinals here, I think that, if Purdy doesn't play, I just don't think the Niners have a shot. So I'm going with the Cardinals. And then that moves us on to Sunday night, a battle for the number 1 seed, which is kind of nuts. So the NFC number 1 seed goes down in Detroit at Ford Field. Sam Darnold obviously put up a bunch of yards against my Packers, in this last week, but not a crazy amount of points. There was a lot of people that, were saying, oh, the Packers defense just isn't very good, but it's like for how many yards he put up, I mean, to me, it's like, and how many drives they had at the benefit of the turnovers, at the benefit of many short drives and lulls for the Packers. I just think that, it was a typical day for them. A team that doesn't really rely on the run too much. We obviously have Aaron Jones eclipsing 1,000 yards, but to me, the Vikings, Lions, it's really going to come down to, being able to be patient. Because the one thing I'll say about the Detroit, even though I don't like their two safeties have accounted for a good number of their picks. And it just seems to me like you can't really go deep against Detroit. And the Vikings really do like to work that middle of the field, but I just don't think that's really going to be an option for them. With the likes of Kirby Joseph and I forget the other gentleman's name, but they account for most of the majority, well over the majority of their picks that the Lions have had this season. And the Lions really showed that goodness. Their offense is crazy lights out. And, I know that Detroit's defense is a liability. I, know that sort of thing. But I think that, like, I also think that, you have your two safeties and that sort of thing that are very, very good. I think it's going to end up being a very, very gritty game. And with that being said, I think that the Lions take this game. I think that they're too much of a team that is really, they are really fueled off of their fans, and they're the closest team that is like Kansas City in the sense that like they've become very good in these close games at managing it and coming out on top at the end. So I think that Detroit wins this. I think that they secure the first round bye. And with that being said, that concludes obviously this week of predictions. If you guys have any opinions, any thoughts, you please share them in the comments. This is Castcast, and I'm your host, Casty Streeter. And as always, go Pack Go.